I've known a few people in my personal life who've struggled with addiction, and I myself have struggled with sugar addiction. And I want to talk today about rehab and AA or self help groups and this idea of being able to get our life back on track. One of the things that is interesting is that when people go to rehab, the focus is on getting them to acknowledge that they have a problem and then getting them to avoid the addictive substance or addictive actions that they're doing. And it's like the question is, why doesn't that actually work? So we see this model everywhere. And one of the things I want us to think about is that most people didn't become addicted just because they tried something once. Most people become addicted because they engage the behavior, like they had a positive experience, and physiologically, like so their mind and their body. So like when you drink or you have this feeling that happens and they enjoyed it, but also there was more going on. And I feel like when we don't acknowledge that there was more going on is when we get into trouble. We want to feel good. And we do exercise or we scroll our phones. Like when we're doing these things, we're trying to find and be in scenarios where we end up feeling good. And it happens because, well, obviously there's a reaction that we're getting to what we're doing. We like it and we keep doing it. Now, when we do these actions, our brain, it releases neurotransmitters. And it reinforces this idea that what we're doing is pleasurable. So when we have positive experiences and we get these releases, then we have like that dopamine release that causes us to not only feel the pleasurable sensation, but anticipate that when we do it again, we're going to have that pleasurable experience again. We have a serotonin release, which makes us have positive emotion. So it's not just the feeling of our body, but it's also an emotional, happy, good feeling that we have. We have oxytocin, which causes us to connect with people. And we don't even understand how important it is for us to connect with people. Like, there have been experiments that show that babies that don't get enough touch, so sometimes your child might be in the hospital or something when it was first born and it's not getting enough touch versus when it's at home, mom or dad or sibs or auntie are holding this child all the time. And that touch allows the child to grow properly and develop properly. Like just, we need to be touched, and it doesn't go away because we become adults. And then, of course, there's all the endorphins that get released that allow us to feel less pain. And feeling less pain lets us engage more in difficult scenarios. So like when we're doing exercise or like places where we need to push our body and still find it pleasurable. Now, so most self-help programs, and I think understandably so, they focus on us getting away from the substance because in our home life, that substance is causing so much problem. In our work life, it's causing usually in our health, it's causing so much problems. And usually the idea is if I can just get this person to stop, what is it, gambling? What is it, drinking? Whatever the thing is that you're doing, if I can get you to stop doing it, then you're going to do better. Right? If you just avoid it, life will be better. And that's where the problem happens, though, I think, with a lot of these programs, whether it's self-help, even some of the rehab centers, they put so much focus on you figuring out ways to avoid the negative, addicting thing, and they're missing the bigger point. There's a psychological component to all of this. And it's more important than the physical in a lot of cases, because your addiction can actually transfer from one thing to another. If it was really about that physiological thing, if it was really about just avoiding that thing, then your addictions wouldn't transfer, which is what we see all the time. Somebody stops drinking and then maybe gambling kicks up, or maybe like chasing other things like video games kicks up, or right. And maybe I was never a big shopper, but now all of a sudden I'm buying a lot of stuff online. We need to understand that what's most important is that you want to feel good, but also that you don't want to feel bad. And I feel like that part of the story, that I'm trying not to feel bad, is the part that gets missed in these rehab centers and the AAs of the world and whatever version that you happen to be in. If I don't want to feel bad, well, this action that I'm doing seems like it's giving me both, right? It's giving that pleasure center in my brain that hit, and so I end up feeling physically good and emotionally good, and but I'm also distracted from whatever problem happened to be in my life, and therefore I don't feel bad. So we get both, and at the same time it's not helping us, and at the same time then it makes all the things that they try to do in rehab, if they're not focusing on the avoiding the bad, it makes it hard to accomplish. Because so I'm just going to stop going out with my friends because they all drink, so I'm going to stop going out with my friends, but then aren't I going to feel bad? If I feel left out, aren't I going to feel bad? If I'm not like everybody else, aren't I going to feel? And this is now part of the problem that we end up living, because so lighting up those pleasure centers in the brain, which causes us to feel good, can come from food, so sugar, and it can come from sexual activity as well. And so if even I'm really good at paying attention and listening to all the centers, what they're telling me to do, and I'm not going off with my friends, and I'm really avoiding all these places where I'm not gambling, I'm avoiding these outside places that could give me that rush. How do I avoid these two things? And now we're in trouble, because actually, when it comes to being addicted and the fact that we can shift our addiction to different things, once it gets shifted to one of these two things, and we're feeling good by eating, or we're feeling good by being with our spouse, and now those things start to be treated in the same way that so they get bigger, they get more intense, they get focused on, they get right. And how do I avoid something that's actually normal and natural for me to be doing? And there's the big conundrum, right? We actually need to engage in sexual activity for our species to reproduce, right? Our we want to have families. We need to do that. Sexual activity is important for a couple to feel bonded, right? To feel connected, to feel happy with their life together. And if I'm using it wrong, so if I'm using it to avoid real world problems, I just stop having intercourse with my spouse. Is that and your spouse is not going to want that to be the answer, right? Nobody wants that to be the answer. And okay, but what about sugar? And this is where it gets tricky, because do I actually need to be eating sugar? No. In fact, it's one of the few places where in this story, what I'm saying, I'm contradicting myself, because I don't actually need to eat sugar. My body makes all the sugar that I need. But not eating regular food then makes me feel different than everybody else, makes me feel disconnected from everybody else. It makes me feel like an outsider. It makes me feel like there's something wrong with me. And because we don't like to feel pain. We don't, and feeling different than everybody else is going to make you feel a kind of pain, right? Because I'm the problem. Now, actually, I'm not the problem. Sugar addiction happens under the radar. And it happens because we are eating so much sugar from such a young age, even though at a young age, most children push away from sugar. And I'm talking at a young age. I'm talking about like under the age of 1. Most children have a ick reaction to sugar until the parents keep pushing the sugar and get the kid used to it. But until we do that, they're like, they don't like it. Now, we don't notice this because I don't even know why we don't notice this. I'll be honest with you. Like, as I learned what sugar was doing in my body and I thought back on how my daughter reacted when I first started to introduce solids, she liked the meats. She liked the vegetables that were more bland. She always had that facial ick to the ones that were sweet. But she needs to eat bananas, right? So I push forward. We develop our addiction at such a young age. And then when we have metabolic issues, we don't really understand where they're coming. When we are having struggles with our body, we don't know why, because we think the foods we're eating are healthy. Now, I will give everybody credit that you'll stop eating the chocolate bars and you'll stop eating the real junk food, the cookies and whatever, if you have weight to lose or if your doctor says you need to cut out the sugar. It's rare that when the doctor says cut out the sugar, we're thinking about pasta or rice. It's rare that we're thinking about, potatoes and carrots. We're not thinking about those things. We don't even understand that there's sugar in those things until a calculator. And I want you guys to really think about that. I want you to think about taking the time to put it in a calculator. Because when you start to calculate how much sugar is in what you're eating, even for those of us who are trying to do healthy keto lifestyle, if you're not tracking, how do you know that you're eating what you're eating? And I remember when I started, I was so sure that I was doing great until I put it in the calculator, and partially because I didn't know I should have been calculating it at the time. I just thought, I'll stop eating rice, I'll stop it. I'm for sure going to be at 20. I was still at 150. Right? Regularly. Until I saw that and I'm thinking like, wow, how much sugar is there in rice? Wow. How much sugar is there in pasta? And like, I had no idea at the very beginning. I really thought I was doing amazing, and I was doing amazing. I wasn't doing 350 anymore. So that was amazing. I could have been doing better. So I'm asking you to take the time to download a food tracker and to input the foods that you eat, every food, for a day, for a few days. The weight of the food matters. You need to tell the calculator how much you're having. And I want you to verify the amount of sugar that you're eating. Because if you're trying to manage your addiction, and the reason I'm making this video is because of that, because people keep asking me, Violet, how do I make sure that I don't keep going back? I keep finding myself going back. I do well for 2, 3, 4 days, and then it's pulling me back and I end up eating things. And I want you to understand it's probably because you're not tracking and you think you're doing less carb than you're actually doing. In order to solve your addiction, you need to actually know if I'm engaging with it or not. It's easy for an alcoholic to know if they're engaging with alcohol because, right? Like, I know if there's alcohol in something. It's easy for someone to know if they're gambling. It's obvious. If I'm playing video games, I know. So if I try to cut down how much I scroll on my phone, I know because I know when I have my phone in my hand. What happens, especially for things that I'm going to do because I'm always going to eat. What happens when I don't know how much carb are in what foods that I'm eating? I'm not going to be able to appropriately understand how much I'm inputting in my body. So I want to add one more point here. The amount of carbohydrate that most doctors believe that a human can have in them before they start chasing is 20 grams of carb. Now, I'm saying that to you knowing full well that for me, the number is not 20. For me, if I cross 18 grams of carbs, I start chasing. So my number is lower than what most doctors believe. And the question is why? Because I have actual metabolic damage. What does that mean? My joints have been hurting me, had been hurting me since the age of 20-ish. Right? In my 20s, I started to notice it. So I only started to solve this problem in my later 40s. That's 20 years, 20 plus years of my joints living damage and me still eating the thing that was causing the damage. Now, of course, as soon as I took the sugars out of my life, right, so I took them down to 20 or less, absolutely. Did my pain go away? Yes, it did. Does that mean that all of my problems are solved? No. And this is where it's important for us to really pay attention to what information your body is giving you. Because my body was telling me that even at 20, like, no, don't do that. It's too much. Now, because I listened to my body, I've since decided I'm going to stay well below 18, right? Sometimes I can get up close to 10 grams of carbs in a day, but it's rare. It's very, very rare that I pass 15. And it's very often that I'm at between 0 and 5. Why? Because I felt the repercussions of going to 18 plus, and it wasn't fun. Those carbohydrates that are causing me to chase, they're giving me that serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, like they're giving me all these pleasure signals. They're decreasing my feeling of pain by allowing endorphins to be released. They're doing something that typically I would only get by doing positive actions, and they're giving it to me through eating sugar. That makes it hard for me to not eat the sugar. And how much my body is reacting to it, that's where the difference fluctuates. I react a lot, but I had a lot of damage. If you're just at the beginning of showing damage, maybe you're just starting to gain weight, or maybe you're just starting to have aches and pains. Maybe you're a younger person than I am, and you've only had 20 years instead of having the whole 40 some odd years of eating poorly. If that's your story, you might be able to get right up to 20. You might be able to get up to 30 before you start to get kicked out. But the point isn't that. The point is it about getting to the edge before I get kicked out of ketosis? Or is it about understanding that my body makes all the sugar that I need, and so therefore in eating sugar isn't helping my story? Therefore, the less I eat, the better. This is the conversation I want us to start having. This is the conversation. Because, well, mostly because I feel like there's so much better that we could be doing for our health. I want us to really start looking at this desire to keep sugar on our plate as us not understanding our addiction. And I want us to make better choices. So the comment of the day is coming from Built Different. And I do have a problem with sugar addiction. That's my struggle. And the cravings for things like chocolate are so strong that sometimes it feels hopeless because it's difficult to conquer. Like an actual drug. I start over my keto frequently because of it, and because I'm around people who don't really understand keto, I also end up putting myself in social situations where I fall back into the spiral of eating again. And even though I physically feel horrible, I end up back to eating chocolate. And the part of this comment that I want us to focus on is the feeling hopeless, that you are influenced by what other people are eating, and that you eat chocolate despite feeling physically. Why do I want us to focus on that? Because not problem solving that story. How much carb do I need to, how little carb do I need to be eating that at least lets me stay in ketosis? That's the question mark. And I'm not problem solving if I'm not looking at that piece of information first and foremost. I'm not problem solving if I'm not allowing myself to look at what makes me chase, right? So if being with other people is causing me to chase, it's not the other people, because I'm not going to, in order to be physically healthy, never be around people again. That will stop me from being physically healthy. Remember, humans need contact. I need to problem solve. What's happening in my life when I'm now looking to eat those things, and it might have nothing to do with food, and usually has nothing to do with food, because the food is just an avenue to engage my addiction. In fact, what it actually has to do with is feeling left out. What it actually has to do with is feeling different than everybody else. What it actually has to do with is me blaming myself for an addiction that was created over many multiple years that I didn't start. And when I start to understand that, then rather than trying to fight what my body's doing, because my body's right, that's a hard one, but it's reality. My body wants me to be healthy, but my body's also engaging with whatever I intake. And so now there's a contradiction. I want you to plan your meals. And by planning my meals, that means that when I know I'm going to be with people, I'm thinking ahead about what I'm going to eat, because I'm going to ask what's on the menu, right? What restaurant are we going to, so I can go and check in the restaurant. What can I order? Having a good plan for myself before I even get there, so that I can enjoy my time with my friends or my family, rather than while I'm at the restaurant frantically trying to decide what can I order so that I don't look different than them. Because the goal is not to look the same as them. The goal is to feel good, right? You said you feel physically ill when you eat the wrong things. Well, I want to feel good. Prioritize your health over taste of food, and more importantly, over the opinions of others. I love making these videos for you guys. Wellness Warriors, I'm also happy that you come back, and everybody who's new, subscribe, ring that bell so that you can get on the road to health. I make new videos every week, and I'm live every Monday. See you next week.